Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
O'Reilly. You need parts? O'Reilly Auto Parts has parts. Need them fast? We've got fast. No matter what you need, we have thousands of professional parts people doing their part to make sure you have it. Product availability. Just one part that makes O'Reilly stand apart. The professional parts people.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings, naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
Comedy fans, the one and only Sebastian Maniscalco coming to XL Energy Center. You can get ready for an unforgettable night of laughter and fun when he takes the stage Friday, February 14th. Check out our contest page. That's your chance to win a pair of tickets. KFAN.com, keyword contests.
612 guy, is there any chance that at the top of the show you could inform listeners that the entire show will once again be nothing but NBA talk? It really is turning into NBA radio. What's the date of the NHL trade deadline? It's early March, correct?
I'm only worried about the NBA, Dan. Yes, early March, first week.
Here is my pledge. Whatever day that is, and if it's similarly, the trade deadline is in the middle of the day, it was 2 o'clock Central Time in the case of the NBA deadline, my pledge is we will open the show with NHL trade deadline stuff. See, 612 guy, it's called timely reporting on a story that is fresh. And 612 guy probably doesn't like the NBA, which is legal. There's no obligation. If he listened to yesterday's show and thinks that all we talked about was NBA, he's delusional. That's okay. But I will make that the pledge.
March 7th.
March 7th. What day of the week is that?
Let me pull up the calendar here. March 7th is a Friday.
Oh, a Friday.
Yep.
All right. So on that day, the first hour, or certainly the first couple segments, whether the Wild make a move or not, will be NHL trade deadline. And more importantly, because we really haven't just talked trade deadline, we've talked about the condition of the Wolves, where we are, where we're going, where we have been. We'll do the same thing, 612 guy, for your Wild Club, because on that day, it will be the most timely thing to discuss. It makes sense to follow stories as they develop. We just had, a couple days ago, the largest trade in the history of professional sports. Forget just basketball, which is part of the reason there has been more trade deadline discussion than there ordinarily indeed might be. All right, you want me to mix it up? I'll mix it up this way. We'll see what 612 guy feels about this. Hot off the presses. This is a New York Times story, although you can find this story a number of other places. Only athletes who were assigned female at birth, will be eligible to play women's sports at NCAA member colleges and universities, the organization announced today. That decision, effective immediately, came a day after President Trump signed an executive order barring transgender girls and women from playing sports in the women's category at federally funded educational institutions. Quote from Charlie Baker, who is the president of the NCAA, in a statement. We strongly believe that clear, consistent, and uniform eligibility standards would best serve today's student athletes instead of a patchwork of conflicting state laws and court decisions. To that end, President Trump's order provides a clear national standard. The previous NCAA policy had been on transgender athletes that basically each sports national governing body had the power to decide the parameters of their participation. That's still my preference, actually, but that's the way it was set up. Trump comes through with another executive order, and the next day, the NCAA, in a major announcement, says, we're out. Executive order is based on the administration's interpretation of Title IX, the 1972 civil rights law prohibiting sex discrimination in educational programs that receive federal funding. Barring transgender girls and women from women's sports was one of Mr. Trump's campaign promises. So we've talked about this subject before, and sometimes in intense fashion, because all along, whether it's related to this subject or gender-affirming, quote-unquote, gender-affirming care for minors, for, as far as I'm concerned, way too long, there was an inability to have rational discussions about it. Because if you raised any questions or any concerns on either of those matters that didn't go along with what the lefty orthodoxy had decided, you were immediately painted as a transphobe. What are you afraid of exactly? It's rather sad, rather pathetic that we could not have these discussions, that questions could not be at least asked, that we cannot have these conversations, especially in the wake of the fact that several European nations have done their the Sawanga backpedal certainly when it comes to gender affirming care for kids, for adolescents, not for adults, completely different subject, but for kids. A number of countries, England included, Great Britain, has said, we don't think the research on that was sort of became gospel is anywhere near as certain or as methodical as was suggested. In fact, we think there could be some harm in going about this as cavalierly and as easily as we often have. Now, the comeback on both of these subjects has also been, how many people what are you worried about here? I mean, how many individuals does this really involve? Which I never felt was a particularly powerful argument. It shouldn't matter if it's 1 or 100 or 5,000 or 50,000 or whatever the case may be. And, you could put me, well, it's interesting because CNN, I think last night, just released a poll that indicated 79% of Americans, 79% of Americans believe that men should not be allowed to participate in women's sporting events. In other words, in this case, we're talking about transgender, right? Women becoming men. I should say men becoming women. 79, I mean, as the pollster pointed out last night, we don't get 79% on anything. So part of what's been sad about the discussion for the last several years is people have been walking on eggshells about a subject we should be able to have open conversations about. And if you go to the Martina Navratilovas of the world, they'll say, here's what for them has been lost. And it's their belief that the original Title IX implication is damaged badly by opening the door as freely as many of these governing bodies have in allowing transgender women to participate in women's competition. I say, wait a minute. For so long, we were about protecting women and giving them the opportunity they have been denied, and that in many cases, and it doesn't even matter how many, in a number of cases, it was affecting competition and opportunities for women to win competitions or to compete in a way that they otherwise would have been able to do. And that's where this is funky for the lefties, because 79% would indicate there's a lot of lefties.
And Martina is a big lefty.
A huge lefty, absolutely.
Not just left-handed on the tennis court.
Right, that's true.
Not just a lefty there.
That this transcends the notion that, well, if you go down that road, you must be, like I said, you must be afraid of this whole concept. What are you afraid of here? I don't think it has to be about fear. It can be about what is deemed as fairness. And that's where, if you want to get strategic and get cynical, where I think the Jets have to be really careful about how they paint this as, this is just a shark thing, and that's what they're doing, and they're scaring people, and this is not that big of a deal. You know, the Washington Post made news. This was actually late last year. They had an editorial, and this was shortly after the election. And remember the comment, Seth Moulton is a Democratic rep out of Massachusetts who made news at the time. This was in the period where the Democrats were trying to, quote unquote, or at least some were trying to force Democrats to look in the mirror and say, well, where did we screw up here? Why did we lose to this? How do you lose to this guy a second time? And Moulton was one of those individuals who spoke up. He said, Democrats spend way too much time trying not to offend anyone rather than being brutally honest about the challenges many Americans face. I got 2 little girls. I don't want them getting run over on a playing field by a male or formerly male athlete, but as a Democrat, I'm supposed to be afraid to say that. There's a lot more to get to in this editorial that I think is still germane today to what should be, I think, for me, the reasonable position on this particular issue. We'll get Guardsy involved in it as well, because I know he loves getting into these kinds of controversies. But first, let's put $1,000 in somebody's hand.
And credit is the key word for the 4 o'clock hour in our national cash contest as we try to put $1,000 in your hand. Go to KFAN.com and enter the keyword credit.
Ever notice your dog slowing down and having health issues and wonder, what can I do to make them better? Well, my friend, add Rough Greens to your dog's food for 90 days, and I guarantee you'll see changes that will amaze you. Greetings. Naturopathic Dr. Dennis Black, inventor of Rough Greens here, and I invite you to give your pup the Rough Greens 90-day challenge. In the first 30 days, you'll see shinier coats and increased energy. By day 60, your dog will have a stronger immune system, less shedding, improved joint function, all due to the live nutrients that you've added to their diet. And at 90 days, better digestion, reduced inflammation, improved heart health, and you may even have reduced their cancer risk. Fetch your dog a free Jumpstart trial bag today. Go to roughgreens.com, use promo code 90day. That's ruffgreens.com. Use promo code 90day. You just cover the shipping. You don't have to change your dog's food to improve your dog's health. Just add a scoop of Rough Greens.
Can.
1, 2, 3.
You know him from the Bad Boys franchise. Now you can see him live at Mystic Lake. Martin Lawrence bringing the Y'all Know What It Is tour to the Mystic Showroom May 2nd and 3rd. Check out our contest page now. See how you could win your way into the May 2nd show. KFAN.com, keyword contest to enter.
Well, was a cold, empty sheet. 3 nights in a row, baby. I don't know where you've been. You say you're working late. Could it be you got another man?
Let's get back to that Post editorial I mentioned. And as was pointed out here, as soon as Moulton said what he did, there was a backlash, even within his own political camp. His campaign manager quit. A state legislator accused him of scapegoating transgender youth. It went kind of on and on from there. And amazingly, in the Post story, they're going, well, he's got a point, or the column, I should say editorial. And they write, trans women's participation in sports raises thorny questions about fairness. But that should not preclude Mr. Moulton from speaking his mind. Trans people deserve to be treated with dignity. The law should protect them from discrimination in areas such as employment and housing. But the realities of human biology raise legitimate questions about any notion that trans women should always and everywhere be treated exactly like cisgender women. In athletic competition, male puberty confers significant advantages, while these biological differences vary by skill and sport. A 2023 paper by medical researchers in the U.S. and Italy noted that it is well established that the best males always outperform the best females when the sport relies on muscle power, muscle endurance, or aerobic power. Hormone therapy that many trans women take reduces some of those advantages over time, but research into how much these advantages can be mitigated and over what time frame remains ongoing. Other advantages such as height are fixed by the end of puberty, and this poses obvious fairness and safety questions as well. Note, they write, we say questions. The public needs more and better research to make those decisions. But unless the data show that transitioning can fully erase the effects of male puberty, the country will also need a frank and open debate about those trade-offs between inclusion on the one hand and safety and fairness on the other. And yet too often efforts have been made to avoid or prevent discussion of those trade-offs by labeling debate inherently transphobic. This is not how a healthy democracy makes decisions. In fact, then they lay out that even in 2023, there was a Gallup poll showing that almost 70% of Americans think sports participation should follow birth sex, not gender identity. They talk about, well, persuasion is the stuff from which long-term majorities are made. And though the battle over trans inclusion is frequently compared to the same-sex marriage debate, there are two key differences. So that society had a long and robust debate over marriage equality, and there was no reasonable doubt about the merits. Same-sex marriage was already winning the debate by the time the Supreme Court decided in 2015, making it legal across the country, and that victory has proved durable, even according, if you want to go by the polls. In a decade or two, we might look back and wonder how we could have ever doubted that trans women are entitled to compete in women's sports, such as swimming and boxing. But it is also possible that after more data and more debate, history's verdict will go to those who now argue that certain spaces where strength and size matter most should be reserved for cisgender women. The moral of their story is with this, we got to come out of hiding and stop terrifying people from having reasonable discussions about this. Because as we mentioned, there are plenty of lefties, including Martina, who are involved in this thing. And I don't want to disqualify righties from being involved in it. I think the numbers indicate this transcends whether you're a shark or you are a jet. The comeback, we're getting a comeback that often is offered at a time like this. You see, I starred this one, I think. Fine. No trans women in NCAA sports. Let's move on. There are currently 8 of around 230,000 women and NCAA transgender, I guess, athletes is what this texter is saying. Okay, that's fine. I don't know if that number is accurate. I don't care if it's 1. It doesn't matter. The likelihood is that there will be more. It's something that's happening more and more. And generally, when we're talking about protecting the sexes in a Title IX sense, it doesn't matter. Every individual should be protected. But I would add to that texter, the United Nations just had a report that came out, I want to say it was late last year, saying that transgender athletes competing in women's athletic events have won nearly 900 medals over their competitors. Is it fair to say it's all about that difference? Probably not, but that's a considerable number. It was a 20-page document, and it claims that more than 600 biologically female athletes have lost at least 890 medals to transgender competitors. Defeats occurring in over 400 competitions in 29 sports as well. The study, according to the authors, said the creation of mixed sex competitions has disadvantaged biologically female athletes who take on transgender athletes. So, yeah, I mean, you could say, well, there's bigger things for us to worry about. Of course there are. But that doesn't mean this isn't worthy of discussion, because I think in the world of sports, there is a fairness question that should be a part of the conversation without everybody losing their minds. And we've talked about this before on very specific cases, and how and to be honest with you, often the individuals who are caught in the middle of this are the transgender women, who are then victimized quite wrongly, that they're sort of stuck. They're playing by whatever the rules are that have been established.
Right.
And that's unfortunate, because I don't think this should be in any way personal. And I don't think, as the Washington Post said, this should be in any way an endorsement of not treating trans people with dignity and not protecting them in a legal sense from discrimination. in areas such as employment and housing. Those to me are completely different subjects. This is where it's harder. This is where it's stickier. But that doesn't mean we should just throw up our hands and say, well, if I venture down the road of saying that's not fair to those women, especially if it's one of your own, like a daughter, and you go, oh, well, you can't handle the fact that your daughter's not very good, then we're not really having an intelligent debate and discussion about the issues.
That is where it's hard, because I would think of the 79% of those polled by CNN that believed it should be about how you're born with where you can participate. I bet almost all of them, or a good percentage of those, also agree with what that op-ed just said.
I'd like to hope so.
Yeah. Maybe that's too Pollyanna
right
about it, but because I do think most people fall into that category of, we want to be inclusive. We don't want anything criminal, bad, discriminatory to happen.
Right.
But you can't ignore that there is a fairness issue there. Everybody sees the videos, from time to time. We talked about it in the Olympics with the boxer. There was big questions about that. It's just, this thing kind of came on so quickly, too. That's the other thing, to the gay marriage point, same-sex marriage point. That was a debate for a really long time, and a lot of people, this one seemed like it was microwaved in 30 seconds, and you had to have an opinion, and if you didn't, you don't want to be inclusive?
No, to be honest, it's not that different than the question of gender affirming, again, that loaded term, on children, on adolescents. Same thing. All of a sudden we looked up one day and said, oh, it's fine, absolutely. The first inkling that you get that that's what this adolescent wants to do, go for it. And frankly, a lot of the research has been found to be at least premature and nowhere near as definitive as was offered by Dr. And let's be clear about this. And this is a subject Gerald Posner has gone into rather deep. We may have him on soon on it. There's a financial component to this. You can say that that's cynical, but not so much.
Follow the money.
And in many cases, you have to follow the money. This is another 612, I believe. Yes. The problem with these conversations is the subject in this conversation, which is trans individuals, are never included in the discussion. I've heard you guys bring up this subject multiple times through the years. I've never heard you consult a trans person. As someone who is related to someone who has transitioned from female to male and has friends that are male to female and have taken time to understand their experiences, it is clear how much misinformation and assumptions are taken without actually consulting them. Well, I would say respectfully, a 612 guy, that cuts both ways. There is great misinformation, flawed research that has taken us, in the opinion of many medical authorities, too far and too easily down the road of, you want to start scheduling surgery for 15-year-old kids to change their sex? Go right ahead. So this person might have a point, but I would also say respectfully, anybody I think we just got done saying, and I would say this to any individual who we had on this subject, and it's going to sound cold for me to say this, but to me, what individuals believe is irrelevant to what research indicates about advantages that I think, even if you don't have a medical degree, but especially if you do, biological men have as they transition, even with some of the ways that they block what some of those advantages are supposed to be. I don't think that if we listen, the act of listening to men who've transitioned to being women, that it will hurt their feelings if they're not allowed to compete, is necessarily a reason to say, well, then they should be allowed to compete. What we should be following is the science. And again, most of the science indicates, Washington Post story is another example, but there's myriad others, is that we're foolish to deny what is, again, empirically pretty freaking obvious. That doesn't mean you have a license to mock individuals or ridicule them or abuse them in any way, shape, or form. But this really, I don't think, should be about the opinion of any one person. And I do know, because I've read these stories, that, well, a lot of this advantage is utterly contrived and made up. Does that make, in all seriousness, if we're having a common sense, serious conversation, does that make any sense to people? That the advantages that are being proven and have been proven scientifically are not even obvious by the eye test? That it's the old deal of, well, 2 and 2 is not 4. And we say, well, why not? Because it's not. It's 5. If I'm adamant enough about it, by God, it's 5. We say, well, it doesn't matter how adamant you are, how impassioned you are on it. 2 and 2 is 4. And it creates challenges because then you want everybody to participate in everything if you could. And what you do is a fair question. That's all we're doing today, I think, is continuing to ask those questions. But it cannot be, I don't think, any more than I think it should be about any female born at birth, a female, who is now complaining about the advantage. I don't think you do it because she's complaining. I think you do it because the best scientific minds say, who are we kidding? Of course, especially in some sports, the advantage is dramatic. And it's dramatic enough that if we let this play out, there has to be some concern on occasion about injury taking place as well, not to mention opportunities lost to participate. I don't think that, I should say, any of that should be all of that that complicated. Let's do this. Let's make this the bottom of the hour pause. Do we have some inbox entries?
We sure do.
Oh, good. So
we're always taking them, but we sure have some.
And we got a lot more time because we're going the distance tonight. I think till 6:30. Is that correct? Or we got at 6 again today?
No, we're out at 6:10 because the Wild game time got shifted up a little bit.
Of course, I wouldn't know that.
We got an email about it, I think.
I didn't, though, because all I want to talk about is basketball for the first hour.
That's true. If it was the Wolves game, you'd know down to the minute.
You kidding me? I'd be there.
But I will not be going the distance because Blakemore's coming at 5:15 today.
Oh, that's right, because you got a ball.
I got a game. So I'll do the top 5 today, and then I'll let Blakemore handle the rest of the way. Comedy sensation Daniel Tosh bringing his hilarious stand-up show to the Twin Cities. Don't miss your chance to see him live June 19th at the State Theater, and tickets are on sale now. Full details at KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
No relation, I'm assuming, to the late, great Peter Tosh?
I don't know.
Maybe. Who's to say?
Not sure.
Are you familiar with this comedian?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, you are? Okay. All right.
Yeah.
The reggae great. Of course, Peter Tosh was original member of Bob Marley and the Wailers. He was one of the Wailers. Then he went off on his own incredibly talented musician and singer in his own right. Once did a... what was the duet? What was the song? He and Mick Jagger did a duet on a very special edition of Saturday Night Live. I want to say it was a reggae song that they did. Peter Tosh.
Walk and Don't Look Back?
That's it. That's probably the one.
Don't Look Back?
It's brilliant. Yeah, that's what it is.
I don't think he's related.
I didn't discover reggae in any meaningful way till I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, 1981. I show up at a record shop because there's a big record buyer. And I'm saying to myself, Dan, you're kind of R&B guy, soul guy, jazz guy. You think it might be time for you to branch out?
Mix it up a bit.
And those were the days in a record store where you'd walk in and they'd have an album on.
Yeah.
And the album was Peter Tosh. And I can even remember the name of the album. It was called Mystic Man. And I said, kind of interesting. A little different. So that day I bought 2 reggae albums. One was Peter Tosh, Mystic Man. The other was Uprising, Bob Marley and the Wailers. And I never stopped listening to reggae from that point forward. It's not big in our bumper music collection. Now we're not supposed to be even talking about bumper music. But I've always been a big reggae fan, but I don't think this is the same Tosh.
It's not.
Yeah. And by the way, Peter Tosh was murdered. Horrible story in Jamaica. I don't remember if it was Kingston or not, but it was a brutal story. I saw him in concert in Atlanta while I was there. Peter Tosh.
Along the lines of, is this person related to somebody? Mm-hmm. I had to break a woman's heart last night.
Oh.
Actually, she used to be one of Giovanzi's teachers. Her son's on my son's basketball team.
Oh, okay.
Big listener of the program. Loves the fan. But I had to break her heart that Walker Kessler wasn't actually Pat Kessler's son. That was the unfortunate thing.
Was there devastation?
She said, he's not? I said, no. I said, but you guys said he was. I go, yeah.
That'd be a hell of a story.
Especially with Kessler, we tend to say some things that aren't necessarily true. So I had to break her heart there a little bit. Because she was happy for Pat.
That happens.
That he raised an NBA son.
That happens sometimes.
It does.
It does happen sometimes. But it's got to be a bad feeling, right? Because you don't want to take... you don't want to take away their joy.
Because
right?
she loves Kessler.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Both Kesslers?
Father and son. She loved Pat and Walker. And Kessler was on yesterday, so we were talking about that. But alas, Walker Kessler, at least we don't think, is Pat Kessler's son.
Well,
he's claimed it's not.
But we don't know.
But we've never Maury Poviched him.
Yeah, that'd be a good story, wouldn't it?
Pat Kessler,
It doesn't.
you are the father.
I don't think it adds up. But then again, we don't know.
Nothing with Kessler adds up.
That's true. That's a good point. All right, is it time for the inbox? Let's do it.
Time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters. We get
Brought to you by?
Nobody right now, but available.
Damn it.
It's definitely available.
Damn it.
Every Thursday right around 4:30 and 4:41. Pretty good. Dear Dr. Dan, I know that you think that with my trade from Heat culture to the Golden State Warriors culture and my new $113 million contract that I was the big winner here and beat that guy P. Riley. But I feel like the loser here, Dr. Dan. Although, of course, I wanted to play with S. Curry and D. Green, I really wanted to play with my buddy A. Wiggins. Wiggs and I were best friends when I played for the T-Wolves, and now Riley deprives me of the opportunity to end my career playing with Wiggs. I guess I will play really hard for a couple of weeks before I try to force myself to a fifth franchise. This from Jay Butler.
Well, as I recall it, Jay Butler's bigger issue when he was here was with K. Towns. Wasn't it more or was it with A. Wiggins? Do you remember it being more Wig?
What I remember is people assumed it was with Towns.
And it was more Wig.
But it was more Wig. Now, I might be remembering. Maybe that's how I want to remember it.
Yeah.
Because I'm more of a Towns guy than a Wig guy.
Right.
And I know he's the greatest guy ever, and he's got the nicest smile, and I know he's been through a lot.
He has.
I got all of that.
Yeah.
But
Well, here's what Dr. Dan, as of today, is officially sick of. People telling me that we have to remember that 5 years ago, whenever it was, A. Wiggins was the second best player in the NBA Finals.
Hate it.
And could have won the Finals MVP award. That's true. But that was a different lifetime, okay? He has become now, I think, just another ball player, all right? Not horrible.
Like
he will strike tight of guard, but that's what
like he was before that 2-week stretch in the finals.
It's just there's too much of that, like,
Yep.
oh, well, then you should love having him. Now, Miami may say, we'll take him because he will fulfill a role that they see he can fulfill. But let's be honest, they're going to take whatever they have to take in order to get rid of the toxic guy, right? At this point, even P. Riley said, Uncle, you win, to the extent that they moved him. And so and look, let's also be clear, despite that letter, everybody seems to know that Jay Butler wanted to go to Phoenix. But it couldn't get done. There was no trade possibility that interested Miami. Therefore, after earlier in the week, basically saying, well, all but publicly, I don't want a contract extension from Golden State. His agent went to him, I'm assuming, and said, Jimmy,
They're offering it.
they're the only team offering it that can acquire you.
Right.
So what do you want to do? And suddenly Bucket said, you know what? All right, I guess I'll take it. Was it $52 million a year for another extra 2 years?
Yeah, something like that.
$110 million bucks? Yeah, I guess I'll do it. So I like everybody else, Dr. Dan will be quite interested and curious to find out how precisely Jay Butler and Day Green get along. It sounds as if it could be combustible. My guess is they'll both be on their best behavior early because they're aware everybody's going to be watching. But that doesn't mean in the heat of the moment, no pun intended, something might not happen of an explosive nature between them.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
We have 2 letters from the same person. I feel like they both deserve to be read here.
All right, fair enough.
We get your letters every
A
day.
little different angles, but both very good. From the same individual, which I always love. Dear Dr. Dan, it's funny how the tide has turned this week. For months, years even, you have ripped us to shreds for refusing to fork over that precious dough that you think will change everything. Well, Dr. Dan, have you seen the headlines over these past few days? We have signed multiple free agents this week for millions of dollars. That's interesting. Let's see how the other clubs are doing lately. Well, the Timberwolves, I know you love when people just say Wolves, have done what? That's right, nothing. They traded away their second best player after reaching the Western Conference Finals and replaced him with what? Not much. Meanwhile, the current owner and potential owners are battling out in court. Not a good look. Let's check in on our St. Paul friends.
Oh, boy.
How are they doing? Not looking good. They're in free fall. Their best players out for maybe the rest of the season. All they have going for them is how good at retaliation they are. What a bunch of goons. Oh, and their terrible contract mistakes handcuffed them for what? Like 27 years? That's the yearly excuse, right? How many more year-in hands are left now? Year-in hands. Anyway, be nice if you take a minute to give us some much-deserved praise. That from Jay Polad. This one also
Feisty.
From Jay Polad. It's a different angle. Dear Dr. Dan, it's with great sorrow and an even greater sense of financial dread that I inform you of a catastrophic development. My expected U.S. aid money has been withdrawn. Just like that, it's gone. Vanished into the bureaucratic abyss. Now, I know what you're thinking. Jay Polad, why were you expecting U.S. aid money for a baseball team? And to that I say, great question. But that's not the point. The point is, I was expecting it, I needed it, and now without it, drastic measures must be taken. Much like the TV deal last year, I regret to inform you that this means further payroll cuts to the Twins roster. We were already stretching our budget like a 40-year-old rubber band, and now we may have to start fielding a team of unpaid interns and Craigslist volunteers. Pitching depth? Who needs it? We'll just rotate position players on the mound until someone figures it out.
Wow.
As for batting, I hear bunting is highly underrated. If you have any revolutionary cost-saving ideas or access to emergency relief funds for suffering billionaire baseball owners, I'm all ears. Until then, let's hope the fans don't notice when our starting lineup may include a few guys named Steve from accounting. Mourning my financial misfortune, that also from Jay Polad.
Yeah, those are both very different angles, both from Jay Polad. Isn't that interesting? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure I'm ready to apologize to the Twins and Jay Polad because of the misfortune and difficulties and challenges that some of our winter sports teams are dealing with right now. Maybe they're haughty because they have indeed signed a couple of free agents, including a former Gold Glove center fielder, correct?
Yep.
But like the rest of us, I eagerly await the day when Jay Polad comes to a podium and says, ladies and gentlemen, you got them. You got new ownership. We are leaving. Goodbye. And we can all say good riddance.
It's time.
Except for Rocco.
Dr. Dan.
We like Rocco.
Oh, Rocco loves him.
Oh, that's true.
Yeah.
Got another individual or entity, 2 separate letters from this person.
Okay.
Dear Dr. Dan, please do a welfare check through the glass at Jay Gard, who has had an exceedingly rough 24 hours. He suffered through the ongoing M. Timberwolves malaise, an imminent tsunami threat, and finally the multiple indignities of the Beat a Bumper listener show name workshopping, wherein he was unfairly branded as Bumpin' the Lump and the Whiner and E-Diner. Maybe you can remind him that he has 2 state tennis titles, which happen to equal the number of my fully functioning zippers. That from our Palinka's jacket.
Oh, that's good.
Now here's this one. Dear Dr. Dan, am I getting this straight? I only went to business school after all and have a law degree. I'm getting clothing criticism from 2 guys in the cornfields of Minnesota whose idea of fashion is wearing their fancy hoodie. If I want advice on my threads, I'll call Jay Broughton. Leave the fashion to the professionals. That from our Palinka.
That's very well. Those are both brilliantly written, and the second one is perfectly played.
Oh, wait, hold on. I got a third one
got
from our
another
Palinka.
one?
Let's see. I haven't even read it, but let's just go with it.
Okay.
Dear Dr. Dan, there's been a lot of criticism on the show today about a certain piece of clothing I recently wore. I just want to let you know it's pretty good company to be in if you're being compared to B. Pitt and R. Lowe. Even I look good standing next to Jay Reddick. Do you know how hard that is? I'm going to introduce Jay Gard to a term he probably hasn't read on a piece of clothing in a while. Slim fit.
Wow.
The ladies love it, Dr. Dan.
Man.
So while the Wolves chase my team in the standings, we improved the
that's
Lakers quite substantially. What did the Wolves do to improve? I haven't had time to check the trade wire today.
Man.
Anyway, what do you think of this idea? Zip my jacket all the way up from the bottom and turn it into a cape like Superman. Warm regards from the land of beautiful people, our Palinka.
God, those are really good. All 3 of them are great.
You like how I cold read the Guardsy cheap shot?
And yet you didn't censor it.
You got to be a pro.
You read it with conviction, even though it was coming at your expense. Yet
In
again,
fairness, I do own slim fit clothing.
you just haven't worn them in a while.
Don't wear it very often.
very often.
I'd
That's
rather
okay.
wear regular cut.
Yeah, there is, I guess,
At least I'm not in husky
some
anymore.
vulnerability on either one of us, looking up or down at the jacket fit and whether the zipper is open at the front, the top, or the bottom, or whatever the case may be.
I think your hoodie looks
all,
good today.
All I wear is a hoodie and Lululemon pants pretty much every day now. So, yeah, good, well played. Very well played. It kind of does put us in our place.
Well,
I have no problem with that.
What I'm wearing today, like a polo shirt with a sweater over it, it stops people when I wear this. And this is not exactly black tie because they go,
no, that's, yeah.
Wow, you look nice today. So, yeah, thanks.
Who do we got? Illinois, by the way?
Tonight, right? Iowa Hawkeyes.
Iowa, that's right. At Fresh Off, they knocked off USC.
They did on Sunday.
That's very true.
They had to fly in today because of major travel issues yesterday.
Really? Oh.
Icy runways, de-icing problems.
In other words, for them, it's a schedule loss already.
That's what I worry about.
Schedule loss.
Because I think they don't believe in schedule losses.
They don't out there?
They'll rally around this.
Was the USC victory the C. Clark retirement game?
It was.
Well, no wonder. I mean, that's a lot of emotion. That's not even fair to USC.
And they had to fly from L.A. on Friday.
It's a long route.
Schedule loss.
Very long route.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Slim fit. That got me. That was good.
We get your letters every day.
Truth cannot be controversial.
No, not at all.
Dear Dr. Dan, is your show looking for any more NFL correspondence next season? My schedule may be relatively open. I'd love if you could guarantee a sponsor for it as well. Remember, it's not about the dollars. It's about what the dollars represent. K. Cousins.
Well, it's funny because Dr. Dan, at the end of either yesterday's show or the day before, actually tried to defend K. Cousins, who was on national TV somewhere saying part of what was ailing me last year was, I think, an arm injury. And you're the Kirk Obo, you mocked it. And I was willing to say...
I did?
Yeah, you kind of said, oh, that's a good excuse. And
the injury.
Yeah, might... I think it's possible that's legit. Now, that might not explain all of his dysfunction after getting off to a decent start, but the roles were kind of reversed. You were the K. Cousins cynic, and I was the apologist. Funny stuff.
All right. I got to figure out...
How to do this?
Well, there's more that I need to get to.
Oh.
Let's do this one.
Okay.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters. We get your letters every day.
Dear Dr. Dan, I need a favor. Please stop asking to free El Garza. We all love El Garza, but his playing time is appropriate. I dream of having his low post moves and smooth stroke from the three-point line. I would love just one of his low post moves, but when I'm stuck out on the perimeter, I may not have great lateral movement, but El Garza has none. The bench players for the Sea Bulls went around him like Jay Addison goes around a car on 94 going the speed limit. That's very fast, Dr. Dan. Au revoir, our Gobert.
By the way, didn't you tell me he had a double-digit rebounds last night? Did R. Gobert?
15.
Yeah. Can
He was good.
Can he be a legitimate number 2 on a championship team?
No.
That's unlikely at this point, right?
No.
You're not going to add any offense to what he can do at this particular juncture. You're probably right about that.
I think we've got his offense.
Well, we
whatever
do.
it is.
Whatever it is, yeah, it is. They just got to keep trying to include it.
Where are we going here? Oh, here we go.
It's time for Dr. Dan's Inbox.
Oh, we get letters. We get your letters.
This is a deep one. You're going to have to listen to this one. It's a deep one.
All right.
Layers. Dear Dr. Dan, to borrow from an old advertising campaign, I do not cause the failures associated with being a Minnesota sports fan. I make those failures less startling.
Ooh.
What a lot of folks do not seem to realize is that up here, it's not disappointment Minnesotans fear. What they really fear is surprise. Just look at the weather forecast. How much snow is A Valley going to get over the next 24 hours? 3 feet, maybe? The point is, A Valleyans know it's coming. They know they're going to feel miserable, and they're ultimately okay with that, even if they once again have to dig themselves out. When G. Anderson missed, when B. Walsh missed, when D. Pearson pushed off, when K. Kaprizov gets hurt and is out for 2 months during a crucial part of the season, Minnesota sports fans are disappointed but not surprised. When El Nanny was played by a 4'9" guy in the movie Miracle that he doesn't like, he was disappointed, but a part of him was not surprised. As one who is associated with Minnesota sports, El Nanny could anticipate his portrayal in that movie was not going to go exactly the way he wanted it to go. Minnesota sports fans have me to thank for that. I do not live in a house or drive a car or smoke weed with Pete Kessler. I simply exist in the hearts of Minnesota sports fans. I play a humane and necessary role in helping them navigate their misery. Sincerely, P. Sense of Dread.
Very good callback.
Sense.
I thought it
of
might
dread.
be S.T. Stoic, because that philosophy is the Seneca the Stoic philosophy.
That's true.
But that's brilliantly. I'm glad he reminded me of P. Sense of dread, because we have to. I think we have to continue to nurture that. Right now, I would say it's the front runner for a State Fair T-shirt. Palpable sense of dread. You got any walk-offs here? What's up to you? It's 55 after. You got to get going after the top 5. I don't want to hold you up.
Yeah, we'll do one more. It's not really a walk-off. The Palenka Jackets could have all been walk-offs because those were all good.
Absolutely true.
But I loved them all. Dear Dr. Dan, are you tiring of the bad blood towards the Chiefs and P. Mahomes? People should know all too well that it's time to shake it off and just enjoy the game. Anyway, what's wrong with being the dominant force in your chosen profession in your era? T. Swift.
Well, that's a good one. I don't want to talk too much about it because it was going to be I was planning it to be the open of tomorrow's program at 3:00. So we've kind of hinted about it. We've talked a little bit about that with B. Billick when he joined from Radio Row at the Super Bowl. And I heard it again today in a couple places that people are just rolling their eyes about the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't see that much perniciousness with them, even if it follows the pattern of we're just tired of the same team winning over and over again. But at some point, and I hope this would happen if indeed the Chiefs win it again, at some point, especially then, unless there's some ridiculous call late that gets us down the officiating road again, you have to give them their due. And their due would be that they would have accomplished something that no one else in the history of the National Football League has done.
Ready for the top 5?
Let's do it.
Wild are back in action, and the Minnesota Timberwolves stood pat. They stood pat today at the trade deadline. Did they want to?
Oh, that's tantalizing. I got one more for you. Major coaching news out of the Big Ten.
Oh, I saw this.
Stay tuned.